when someone says you can't do something, that just motivates me just to bring it on. I've been here before. I remember listening to the World Cup in the 80s and just imagining what Maradona was doing and went out to the playground and played and tried to emulate what we heard. We didn't even see it. Everyone's life was changed that day.
Communication is power.
Definitely. I could still feel it in my body when I look back. I'm like, every single one of our athletes are crying for what they experienced. When you transition out of sport and you become a coach, you always wanted to show your athletes that you can still do this. But now it's different. Like, okay, this is not about me anymore.
Today, I get to reconnect with Val Walker, who grew up in Jamaica and made his way to Normal, Illinois, where I met him as my high school soccer coach. We dive into his early experiences playing soccer informally in Jamaica, his transition from player to coach, and his passion for using sports to teach life skills and create opportunities for underprivileged athletes. His insights truly highlight the power of sport to shape lives, build community, and foster personal growth beyond the field. Let's get into it. Your first year coaching the girls team at the high school was my sophomore year.
Yeah.
And that was the first time you'd ever coached girls,
yes, indeed. That was quite a learning experience for me.
Yeah. Talk about it a little bit.
The one thing I remember, though, is you were like my translator. You kind of got me. And so I would say things in my own Jamaican male type of way, and then Big E would translate for the rest of the team. So I always remember that you were the translator.
That is funny.
Yeah, because it's like I just had problem at that point breaking things down, right?
And it was just in a way that you never had, and like we had always just been coached a different way.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so I just remember that word in particular, that so you were my translator. So there's something, and then you go over and
re-say it to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. It was always like in the same vein. It was just like, no, this is what he means.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Also, all of you just understand.
Yeah, right. Which I admired the fact that you were able to get it, because you were such a good communicator.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fun. So one way I like to start all these episodes. Are you an athlete?
Yeah, I was an athlete myself, playing soccer back in Jamaica. Yeah.
Are you an athlete now?
I consider myself in definition. When I think about the word athletics, right?
Yeah.
First thing that comes to mind is the competitive nature of it. But I'm not in that competitive mode anymore. But I feel that I'm still in tune with athleticism. Mm-hmm. So is there a difference between an athlete and being athletic? Right. And you know what I mean? So for me, I'm athletic because I still run. I rode for 30 minutes this morning and I did my ab workout. Yeah. But
you probably still hop in at practice, don't you?
Yes, I still hop in, still be a part of drills, still, so yeah. And that, it's funny. We had, did a black versus silver game and, we were short, a number, and I played for the silver team, so to speak, and I felt good. It was like such a rush when you're able to get out there and yell and you're part of the game. It's something like, wow, when the game is over, because it was raining too, and it was cold, obviously, in the spring, and I felt a sense of accomplishment. Wow, the adrenaline rush, that feeling that you were part of a team competing against another team. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. It comes right back.
Yes, it comes right back.
We can feel those, those intangibles, those, being competitive or working hard, but it is one of those where it's like that feeling of game speed, and just like getting out and being able to just play and be creative and do all of those things. Yes. We don't always get those opportunities as we age and are not, consistently competitively playing.
Yeah. Calling out a mark in real time and, come back here, go wide, let's get up defensively, As a keeper, you did that quite a bit, getting everybody up the field and I'm playing center back and it's like, wow, it comes right back because that was my position playing in college, still center back. So it's like, I felt the urge to get the guys up the field, so.
That's why we understood each other, Walker.
Yeah.
That's why. Go into that a little bit in terms of give us kind of your history as an athlete.
Yeah. My history is kind of different and culturally somewhat different because I grew up in Jamaica in a household where both my parents were teachers, and so sports was not the primary focus in my house. But I always loved playing, and so in Jamaica you have these corner league. You get out and play with your local guys. So I was always sneaking away and getting involved in that. And I didn't play high school, but because my experience playing with my friends and with these local teams, I went to college when I was free away from my parents. It was kind of almost a rebellious thing to join the team. And so in Jamaica, there's no scholarships or recruiting. You go to school because you're smart enough. Yeah. And then when you go there, you make the team. So I tried out for the team, and I did very well. And that the rest was history, as they say, right? And so played 3 years at Sam Sharp Teachers College, and so that was fun. But I was always the guy who was sort of the underdog because I didn't come from a big program, didn't play high school.
You didn't have formal training per se. Yes. Yeah.
And so, but over time, my athleticism, my size, my will, my determination, my no-nonsenseness kind of took over and, was a very big part of the team. You know?
I mean, that's huge. And you're exactly right. Like you didn't play organized soccer.
No.
Until you went to college.
Yeah, right.
And then you were like, I'm going to walk onto the team.
Yeah, right. Yes. And I'm going to do well.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to kick some butt with kids who have done this for the rest of the entire life, Yeah. So.
Of course you are.
Yeah.
And you take that into everything you do now.
Yes, exactly. And to be honest with you, that's been the story of my life. Just, my wife will tell you, I kind of have a chip on my shoulder. When someone says you can't do something, that just motivates me, to say, bring it on. I've been here before,
Totally. I'm going to swap it back a second further. So growing up, you went and played soccer on the corner. You were playing with the neighborhood kids, all of that. Yeah. Would you say that you identified as an athlete as a kid? Was that a thing that was in your scheme?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I had abilities playing with the local kids. They respected me. I was accepted. Again, I was fast and strong and those sort of things. But all of us, and that's the other thing with sports in Jamaica versus sports here. Yeah. I feel like in America, and it has been said here that everyone is overcoached here. In third world countries and poor countries, kids just learn on their own and they play. There's no drills, there are no cones, they just play. And you learn from the older older people that you're playing with, and ultimately you aspire, you watch it on TV, you're hearing. I remember listening to the World Cup in the 80s and just imagining what Maradona was doing, and then we all had this vibe and we went out to the playground and played and tried to emulate what we heard. We didn't even see it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. It takes a second creative level, right?
Yes, right.
You are a soccer coach now.
So my career as a coach started back in Jamaica. I was a teacher there first, and again, coaches don't really get paid for the high school. So as a young 20-year-old teacher, they're like, you're the athletic young one that played college. The boys need a team. Yeah. Go for it. I'm like, okay. So at that high school, I literally started that team. And so that's one of the things at Magotty High School in 1993 or wherever it was. And then I came here, and really what got me back into high school in soccer coaching is my daughter, Maya. She was doing PCSL. And the coach was over there playing Dolphins game and butterfly games and clearly didn't know what he was doing. And I went over and offered my help. Hey, do you want some help? Before you know it, I can remember it something random. There was a ball going over my head, and I flicked the ball back over, and he was amazed. It was he's never seen that happen. And it was by pure luck. Yeah, you
were just in the moment.
Yeah, right. It's like you visualize something and it happens. Yeah. And if you ever try it again, it will probably never happen. And the guy was like, oh my gosh, you are it. You're the coach. And so I ended up helping coaching her. And then I used to, when I came to West in 2004 or so, I used to go out with the boys and just knock it around. Their coaches, they had a coach and he was a banker, and he, sometimes he would be late, but they would be out there, and I'd just go out there and play. And they're like, wow, you know the game. Do you want to coach us? And so that's
literally how
I started at West. Yeah. Okay. They saw me playing. They saw me. I came out there and they're like, wow, our coach was a football kicker at U of I and he doesn't know anything about soccer. So, and so a bunch of people started rallying around for me to coach the boys. And then we had a successful year, and then your coach left. Yeah. That's what started that.
Yeah. Then you coached the boys and the girls team.
Yeah.
Do you remember kind of some of those early years? Like you were saying, so post-college, you started teaching right out of school, right?
Yeah.
And so you started teaching in Jamaica right out of school. That transition out of sport, do you remember that being like an impactful thing to you? Was it something that you thought about quite a bit?
It's funny because when you transition out of sport and you become a coach, I think younger coaches, like when I was younger, we hold on way too much onto our playing as a player mentality.
Yeah.
And so you always wanted to show your athletes that you can still do this. But now it's different. You're now like really like, okay, this is not about me anymore. And there's such a transition from the focus of, as when you stop being an athlete and now you're a coach, you literally have to be conscious about reminding yourself that you're not here to prove anything to your athletes in terms of...
Yeah, they're not going to let you go in.
Yes, right.
They're just literally not going to let you go in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, when, girls versus guys, guys have this, bravado and this attitude that, I've always said girls are so much easier to coach, right? Guys, you literally have to show, in your mind, you have to resist I'm competing with you. No, we're not competing I'm no longer competing with you.
Yeah.
And so you got to really let go and be conscientious of that part of you that still want to be competitive with them instead of being a teacher and a coach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, oh, I've played with someone like you before. Yeah. Knock it off.
Or I play with someone like you and I just want to slide tackle you really, really hard and break both ankles. Yeah.
What? No, that's never happened.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's never
you're
happened.
Like, you're driving me crazy, but here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. So too, it's like for you from that coaching side, it is an interesting transition. And a lot of us athletes go into coaching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't actually have the power to like physically change the game.
Yeah.
But that's where then you have to like switch that mindset of like, okay, I'm going to enable the rest of you to go out there.
Yeah. I think, and this is with teaching as well. The more experienced you become as a teacher and a coach, the more student or player-centered you become. The students' feelings and interests and personal goals are more concerning to you than your own status as, okay, I want to really win 20 games this year and stuff. You start to think about their lives and their own aspirations more and more centered, more player centered than being I'm the coach. And you really, I think humility, it comes to mind. You become more humble. Your ego diminishes.
Totally.
As time progresses.
Totally. Your role becomes different.
Yeah.
And in a sense, like, do you feel like that also creates like your relationship to the sport as well? Like, do you feel like that's a part of it too? Or is it more just like, no, the sport's still there. You still have that. It's just your kind of role in the teaching of it.
As a soccer player and someone who really was passionate about the game, you still, one of the things that really keeps me going back to soccer is the love for it and want to contribute to it at a different level.
Yeah.
And so it's the sport itself, you never lose the passion for it. But now you're like, okay, how can I instill that passion to somebody else, the same passion that I have, the same desires that I had about the sport, the same feeling of this is such a fun activity. You want that in your athletes.
Yeah. And creating that opportunity for them, because you're like, I know how great this can be. I know how joyous this can be. Of course. And just, And
even on the club side, I've had a couple clubs teams now, and one of my really passions about this, I've always had the 3 or 4 kids who cannot afford to play this travel sport because it's expensive.
Socioeconomics.
And so I'm passionate about creating opportunities for them to excel in the sport. Over the years, I've had Jamaicans, I've had, Congolese and all these kids in town, first generation immigrants that could not afford to be on a regular team. So I've always done these independent teams and create opportunities for 3 or 4 of them per time. And that's where I'm at right now too, is making sure that the equity piece is also included in my work, is trying to find kids who are poor that I can help. I have in my current team now, I have 2 kids that give rides. We go to the gym in the morning. So that's also a part of my passion too, is to make sure even the girls team right now, I have some, the demographics of the team has changed. We have some kids who weren't doing so well in school, but now I'm like, okay, I'm using soccer as a tool to make sure that the eligibility is taken care of. We're having conversations about your schoolwork and all that stuff. Years ago when I'm coaching you, I wasn't thinking about the holistic approach there. I was just thinking about, oh my gosh, here's a team that went to state last year, and if I don't go back to state, I'm a complete failure, So, your goals, your ego, all of that have changed over the years.
Totally.
And you start to really think more broadly about the athletes and all facets of their lives,
And what the world needs and what sport can do within that space.
Yeah. I mean, sports is a vehicle that can, talking about the academics piece and the conduct piece. My athletes know that I check their attendance. We have a attendance printout every day. When I just started the girls season, we had 3 or 4 kids who were late for class. Now it's 0. It's like it's a vehicle to a lot of things. And you have to, as a coach now, you have to use it even outside of the season. It's such a vehicle for everything, every aspect of your life.
Even like you using your childhood in Jamaica and all of that. And for many years, you've taken your teams back and you take summer trips. So even with, athletes that are currently on your club teams and things like that you're helping kind of in that equity space. Some kids would never have exposure in those ways.
Of course. Right now we're getting ready for another trip. And my main goal of these trips is just that, is to make sure we expose our kids to all different types of cultural experience. I remember my own daughter-in-law going to Jamaica with us in 2018. And one of the things we do, they go into classes and intermingle with the students. And she ran out and said, they like us. I'm like, what were you expecting? They're people. That's what we're supposed to do as humans, is embrace each other. And so just that was such an eye-opening moment for me, that even as those are things I never thought about, that how we experience other people. Sometimes we have these different thoughts about what their perceptions of us are, but the reality is people are people. And sometimes that's as simple a lesson that is, that's a big one for us to all understand, sometimes with the political climate we're in now, we tend to focus on our differences, but we're a lot more similar.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes a trip, half a way around the world, or Jamaica's not that far, helps us to understand those things, or to confirm those things.
And probably brings up thoughts that a person never even realized they had. You know what I mean? Whether it's good or whether it's bad, it doesn't really matter. But even just those things of like, oh wow, even like internally self-reflective, like, oh, why did I think they wouldn't like us? Like why?
Exactly.
Like it just expands everything.
And
so
the other
much.
thing too is like, happiness as well. You realize that people with a lot less resources than you or have so much happiness, and you're like, oh, why does this thing make my day become horrible when these people have literal nothing and they continue to enjoy their day, and they walk barefooted to school. They have no resources, no lunch, and they're still happy. And I remember the first year I did this, we were doing clinics on gravel playground with kids barefooted and a lot of bloody toes. And our athletes were bringing kids back. Let's put another Band-Aid on this one, this one. And at some point they realized, wow, I've never really had to deal with that before. And so let me be very grateful for what I have, And so, it teaches us a lot, A lot of things come out of these trips. And so I'm always motivated to do it. They're expensive, but the life lessons that our athletes walk away with, it's just, it lives with them forever.
Yeah. And it's through sport.
Yes.
It's through something that they're enjoying that they can share with someone else. It's like sports cross cultural, right?
Yeah, for sure. And our sport, or one of your sports, soccer is such an international, and basketball has become that as well. And
totally.
So we can all enjoy this thing globally. One of the things I still can see pictures in my mind of after every game, the girls would interact with the team. They would have ice cream, and like, what a cool moment. Just girls that don't know each other, they're sitting there eating ice cream and chit-chatting, and and then the technology piece has added a new dimension to it, because now you can be on Snapchat, and the person you met there, they become lifelong friends. You're communicating with them every day. That didn't happen 2 decades ago, right? You meet someone, you walk away with memories, a few letters here and there, but now you combine the sports with the technology. Now the world is this big, and so it is. When you use all of those things, put all of them together, it makes the experience so much greater.
Yeah,
it comes back to the point that I was making about as you grow older, it is not about you anymore. It's about the athletes, and you see the experience and how it. When we drive away from my old elementary school that I went to in 1980, 1970 something, and I look back on the bus and all of her kids are crying, I'm like, everyone's life was changed that day.
Yeah.
And I could still feel it in my body when I look back. I'm like, every single one of her athletes are crying for what they experienced that day.
Oh.
Yeah.
Could you have ever, in your 20-year-old, I'm just starting to teach in Jamaica brain, thought that you would be doing the things that you're doing?
No, never, ever. As a matter of fact, I met Mary in Jamaica. She was a Peace Corps volunteer, and my life changed, because I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I was going to be a principal at a school in Jamaica, live.
Which you also would have crushed. That also would have been great.
Because that's sort of what my parents did. And it's like, okay, that was the goal. That was a trajectory I was on. And, life sometimes take a turn, and I enjoy it. I'm enjoying every moment of it.
Yeah. It's so fun. And like, I've known that, you've been doing all these things over the years, and I get to see them, through social media and that. But too, it's like when we interacted the most, in my life, coaching the girls side was so new.
Yeah.
Transitioning over, coaching 2 teams that year was so new. It's like there were just so many firsts for you.
Yeah.
Do you remember how when you transitioned over, and again, culturally, right, looking women in the eyes, and especially like the authoritative, like you coaching younger girls and all of that, that's not what you do in Jamaican culture. And I remember how that was hard for you.
Yeah, right. And a lot of people had their own opinions about it too. Even though I talk and look away and stuff, because it's like that's a different culture, and people used to misconstrue it to mean other things, right? And then it's like, no, it's just something that I grew up with, and had no value, meaning. And say even with names as well. In Jamaica, we always call people by their last names, and I was horrible with names sometimes. And that's why I always give them nicknames, right? Right? Biggie, Aaron, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's also a cultural thing. It's like,
totally.
And that's really been the story of my life, especially, I lived in Miami for 4 years.
Okay.
And so.
Is that where you moved first?
Yes,
okay.
Mary and I moved there.
Okay.
But then, when we started having kids, she's from here. And from Jamaica to Miami is definitely a culture shock. But from Miami to Bloomington Normal it's even more significant, right?
Just a small one.
Even just thinking about me calling you Big E.
Yeah.
Now I'm even reflecting like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. Why would I have come up with that?
We were talking about it before.
But even in my own innocent brain, it didn't mean that I was fat shaming or anything. It just meant that in my mind, that's a dominant soccer goalkeeper.
Yes.
It meant so much.
It was a very large presence in the goal in a beautiful way.
Yeah, right.
But truly, that's how I took it.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. And again, I appreciate it now as the person that I am now that you're thinking about it now.
Right.
But also back then, like I personally, I can't speak to everybody, but like I had no qualms with it.
Yeah, right.
But you're exactly right.
Yeah. Years later, I would never have said to my goalie.
Yeah. You wouldn't call them Big C or Big K, exactly, whatever their initial is.
Because you learn so much. It's not right or wrong. It's making sure that you are able to communicate with people better, right? And understand, so when I go to Jamaica, right, my family will say to me, boy, you sound like an American, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of Jamaicans that come up here and never change the way how they do things. And I say to them that I'm a teacher and a coach, and a part of my job is to learn to communicate with people. Right. And it's not just the language, it's what you say, it's your demeanor, it's everything.
Yeah. It's what it builds between people.
Yeah, right. Because it is my duty to enhance the communication between my students and my athletes.
Yeah.
And so, starting out, that wasn't something I was thinking about consciously.
Yeah.
But over time, you realize that, these things can cause conflicts, and so to alleviate those conflicts, those chasms, adjust.
Totally.
Totally.
And on both sides, it's that shifting, it's that meeting in the middle.
Yeah. But it's easier for me to adjust because, the girls come for 4 years. I've been there for quite a long time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's so you learn over time.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I remember one athlete, I don't know if she was in your time, but she's doing very well now. She said to me at the end, at the end of her senior year, and she's like, Coach Walker, I was scared of you. And that broke my heart because that's not my intention.
No.
Right. And so those things like, okay, what can I do to make sure that I don't present myself as the scary guy, different an accent. When I look at pictures of all of us, I'm always like, and that's another thing is like, wow, I am like towering over everybody. And just your presence, sometimes you have to think through, things that you never really consciously process over time. You have to now continue to process that,
Yeah. All of us bring all of our things, into every interaction, into every, situation. And it's like you said, humans are humans, and it's all about the interaction between everyone.
Yeah.
But it does take that thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
It's a thoughtfulness, and it's like you said, it's caring about the communication being effective.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Right. So it's like when your family says kind of the like, well, why did you change all these things?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, it's a superpower of yours.
Exactly.
Where it's like you can connect
Yeah.
with people on this very wide spectrum.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, people's thought about gender and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I had a big wedding here, and those are some of the things that I have to talk about is, sexual orientation, for example, because Jamaica is a really big homophobic country, and I'm like, no, you have to respect people. This is how things are. I, understand discrimination as a Black guy. Why do you think I would want to subject that to anybody, right?
Yep.
And so you have to be respectful of everybody and understand, and don't get bogged down in these biblical theology things in your head because people have brainwashed you to believe certain things, you know?
Yeah. But there is an openness to it. And from all the different perspectives, that does happen, you know, where it's kind of almost that like, especially like depending on, you know, what different minority characteristics there are, you know, across the whole spectrum, it's like, okay, well, we're not going to sit here and start ranking minority. You know, it's like, I don't want someone else to feel the way that I have felt about this thing that is othered about me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So much of just, like you said, I think like that communication piece, which from the time you start playing any sport, what is every coach saying?
Communicate.
Communicate. Open your mouth. Yeah. Call out a mark. Call out, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's power.
Yeah.
Communication is power.
Definitely. And then like you're a great communicator and you probably learned some of it from playing sports, basketball.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's something that, and this is why athletes are demanded in the private sector because, you know, you get a guy who sat behind a computer and never played a game of sport and never played a desk sport and never communicated in it, but those people are not very efficient, you know, team members.
They might be fantastic at that thing that they're doing, but yes, it's that team connection. It's like, I love that you're so good at what you're doing right now, but I don't know what you're doing because it hasn't been communicated.
You know, my older son, he's an engineer and he played soccer for me for many years. He might have been out there younger then because, you know, they were running around when you were out there and I ended up coaching him. That's how I started this travel team. Yeah. And he ended up going to Western Michigan, playing 4 years, and now he's an engineer. And they love him in his company, I think because of his sports. He had all sorts of people on his team.
Totally.
He had, the communication piece he learned, the adversity piece, learning to deal with adversity. Going to college and, leaving Kentucky at 10 p.m. at night and having an engineering test at 8 a.m. in Michigan, understanding that,
the bus might get back at 3 a.m., but you're still expected to be in that class for that 9 a.m. test.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so learning to deal with adversities, learning to deal with, some days you had a bad game. And when you're interviewing people ask, have you ever dealt with any adversity in your life? You have a lot of stories, You're
like, how many? Yes. How many examples do you want?
Yes. And the power of sports,
It's so strong. Yeah. And like you said, it's like where that then filters into how you personally, relate to things and that athlete identity, right? Of that, like, you've been able to take your identity as an athlete and just build community.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're helping others with it. You're building community. But like you said, when you got out on the field recently, it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
But that's nice.
Yeah, that is nice sometimes. But then you realize your Achilles hurts out for days and you're like, okay, let's get back to my job here. Let's reality check here. Yeah. This is where you are now. This is your purpose is not running around anymore on the field, right? Yeah. And you're at a different level for impacting people. Yeah. You're no longer at the athlete level,
You're not going to actively body up against them to prove your point.
Right.
It's done a little more eloquently.
I have an athlete who was like, come on, coach. I'm like, you want me to slide tackle? Really? Is that what you want? Like, I would never stick a leg in for a tackle. Yeah. 240 pounds versus 110, law of physics wins, right? But coach, why didn't you win the ball? I'm like, you really want me to?
Don't tempt me. Please don't tempt the athlete side of me, but also know I would win. Yeah. I would win.
And in my mind, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is hurt one of my athletes.
Yes.
Yeah, so back up. And then, soccer, when you start backing up, you're very vulnerable to getting kicked in the shin and getting hurt,
Yes. The only, knock on wood, the only time that I almost had a pretty serious intramurals, done playing collegiately, intramurals, totally was playing co-ed intramurals, started to run across the court, was one of those where it's like I could have gone up for it. Yeah. Out of my peripheral vision, I just see this massive guy running from my left. And this was we were all grad students, but you could play with the undergrads. Yeah. So these were all 18, 19-year-olds. Yeah. And we were all 23, 24. Right. And so I'm like running. I was like, his lack of body control, I can just literally see it in my peripheral vision, but it totally made me like pull up, and that act of changing my normal athlete flow almost injured me worse than if I would have just done it and slammed into it. Like I would have been better off just slamming into him. So I totally get that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Where it's like if you try to be careful and you try to pull back from it, sometimes it's worse.
Sometimes that you open yourself up to some injuries there for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
What other thoughts? What other things do you want to throw out there?
When I came here, I was really thinking about how things have changed in terms of athletics. And, in the old days, when we were in open gyms, we had 20 girls running. We had this, everybody played high school. Everyone was so bought in. Everyone was still like so committed to their school and their team, their teammates. We've lost that a little bit. And it's kind of frustrating. It really is. And so
Which does pull it out of the community side, right? Because so much that has to do with school teams and things like that is there's a proximity piece. Yeah. You're saying versus bypassing playing school sports and just staying club year round.
And just club year round.
Yeah.
And because there's such this lack of understanding of the economics, I feel like parents are being fed the wrong information. Like girls soccer, for example, a lot of colleges are partially funded. It's hard, you're competing with the rest of the world. The odds of getting a paid
full ride,
especially in soccer, is very low.
Less and less.
But yet, there's this, almost a gold rush. And then what happens? You burn the athletes out, right? Yeah. And so they either quit. I just saw something, the average age of girls quitting soccer is 14.
Wow.
And then you have a few playing club all year round, and it's the commitment to a team, and it's like those things are just bothering me. And it's like it's when I used to have 4 or 5, 10, 20 girls a year at a time at open gyms, and everybody's excited about the season. No more. We have 3 girls showing up, which is unfortunate.
Interesting.
It's just the lack of commitment. Yeah. Some people blame it on COVID, but I saw that trend happening. Just because of how the clubs begun to operate.
And that specialization, kids starting to specialize early in that too. Yeah.
All right. I got
practice. All right. Yeah, get out of here.
4.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to me.
It's fun. I've been really wanting to see you. I'm like, Facebook, I'm a people person, and it's okay. I see you can you could do this, but talking to you here, it's been an honor, really.
So great.
So,
if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review. You taking that 5 minutes makes a huge difference and helps us to be able to make more episodes like this. And if you want to see more content in between the episodes, follow us at No Former Athlete on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm so glad you're a part of this No Former Athlete community. And if you know any No Former Athletes that you think I should get in touch with, DM me on Instagram at No Former Athlete. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.